Hi, I'm Candace Benson, the CEO of Benson Consulting and the proud sponsor of the New Hampshire Tech Alliance's Tech Women video series. Our series is highlighting the stories and impact of women leaders here in New Hampshire. And I'm joined by Heather Vitella. Thank you so much for being here with me, Heather.
Thank you for having me. I've been really looking forward to this conversation.
I am excited to hear all of your insights today. So start by telling us a little bit about your journey, how you got to kind of what you're working on today, and what you're excited about.
Sure. So I grew up in northern New Hampshire in a small town. Originally, it had a woolen mill, and it was a wonderful place to grow up. My whole extended family lived there. Grew up spending a lot of time in the woods and in the lakes. And eventually, when I was ready to go to college, decided, hey, I love solving problems, so I'm going to get an engineering degree. Worked for years as an engineer before realizing I'm really curious about problems that sit at the intersection of technology, finance, people, legal. And so over time shifted my career into those types of roles that were more about leading transformation. What I'm excited about today really is people. I run a large global operations team in partnership with several other folks, and I love that role because it's all about people from different places and cultures and generations, and it's just a great opportunity to get to know what the world is like.
I love that. And I'm wondering, as you went through that journey and that intersection of all those different areas of the business and technology, were there any new shifts in the way you looked at leadership because of that? Anything you took from those different areas of focus?
There definitely was, right? You know, I started my journey at a time when leadership was very hierarchical, right? There were decisions made at the top of an organization, they were pushed down and you executed on them. And we're seeing a real shift, and have been for some time, into a more collaborative, inclusive model because it drives innovation, right? And so I have shifted my style, and even more so now, the team I lead now has taught me so much about authenticity at work. And it's a great time to be in tech, great time to be in leadership.
Absolutely. So you talked a little bit about collaboration. So as well, I believe collaboration is the way that we get teams to reach their goals and to have better innovation. But also sometimes it's difficult to get people rowing in the same direction. So what are some of those skill sets that you use to gain consensus and get the folks that are on your team in looking in the same direction, understanding the same objectives?
Right, so as I said, I work in operations, but this is true across all of tech. It's really important to understand what the problem is you're solving. And as a person in tech, we love a good solution, right? And so a lot of the energy goes into holding the team in place and saying, do we understand what it is actually we're solving for, and how does that connect to the outcome that the business needs for us? Those things are really very, very discrete and need to be well defined, and there isn't really a space there for consensus as much as there's an opportunity for clarity.
Absolutely.
With those things defined, right, much like you define a problem statement, you say, okay, these things are true, these things aren't. Once you have that, that's where consensus and innovation becomes important. And part of what I like to do is create space for my team to say, okay, based on how I see the problem, this is what I do, and this is what I do. And then to collectively arrive at a solution that we feel will drive the best results for the company in that construct, right? But that gives space for everybody to have some consensus. Sometimes it's a home run, right? And everybody's on the same page. Sometimes it's not, and I think that's okay too, because we have to be comfortable sitting in moments that are a little uncomfortable sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important. So that co-creation is definitely going to help you be more successful than not, in most cases. But I think you also get that buy-in from your team when you're including them in that conversation and you're asking them what they're thinking, even if, to your point, it doesn't always work and they're not able to always go in that direction. But at least having the conversation, including them in that, hearing how they might address something, it's going to get you to better ideas, and then ultimately that kind of adoption of what you're trying to get completed in your project, right?
Right, and this is what we're paying people for too, is their expertise.
Absolutely.
Right. So
yes, we forget that sometimes.
It's like I said, coming up through the sort of the structure that I did. I started early in manufacturing, and I always was really grounded in the sense that the people doing the work are the subject matter experts, right? And so if we adopt this posture in leadership that it's just very directive, we miss an opportunity to hear from people who are actually doing the work. What are the pain points? What's the opportunities for improvement? And so you have to just be really thoughtful about staying grounded in that.
Absolutely.
Providing direction, but also at the same time being open to what they want to do.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like you are a leader that is really good at listening to your team, which is
I hope they would say that, right? But
yes.
I try to work on that skill because I think it's my job is to provide that for them.
Absolutely. So where do you sometimes see yourself, or do you have a story about kind of using your own vulnerability or something that's happening to you to share with your team to get them to kind of have a better understanding about where you're coming from or maybe influence their decision making?
Sure. So I learned early on in my career that actually one of the most important skills that determines if you're going to be successful is resilience and grit. And I learned that very early on working at a grocery store, right? Like everybody, a lot of us have had those summer jobs as kids, and it builds resilience and grit. And it's actually one of the key signs of success because you have the ability to have a hard moment and then recover and move on. And we talk a lot about growth mindset, right? And it's all about like, I believe that I'm capable of moving forward from this and changing. And so when you're leading a team, authenticity becomes really important because sometimes people haven't had that experience yet where they have failed at something. And that can be really paralyzing for people. They become very fearful about their job security, or maybe they just can't process intellectually how to think about their value creation when they've done something wrong. And so it's really important in those moments to be authentic about your own failures.
Absolutely.
Even though as leaders, like we want to try to message a lot of things, the truth is we've all had moments that were rough. And that's what inspires confidence in the team, is to know that, okay, it is possible to grow and change. That's a human privilege, right? To have that ability to do that. And so I think that's one way I try to lead. But I will say this, my operation team has taught me a ton about being more authentic and about bringing my full self into it and not just trying to present one kind of strong front, but like allowing myself to be really vulnerable with them has gone a long way.
Yes, I can imagine that them being able to see that you're human, you work through some of these things, it allows them also to maybe ask for what they need.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that often happens, especially in a work environment, we tend to find ourselves trying to, I mean, I hate that word balance. I don't think that's actually a real thing.
Right.
But we juggle, right? Maybe that's a better word. So juggling work and life responsibilities and being volunteers and working in the community. What are some of the ways that you see, even as, you know, as women, that we're bringing something to the table that helps us to be able to do all of those things and still accomplish what we need to accomplish every day?
Yeah, I love this question because I grew up with the whole mantra, like, you can have it all. And in fact, you better figure out how to have it all, right? And it created such a weird dynamic because who even came up with that?
Good question.
Whose idea was that? And like, what does that mean? And why are we letting someone else define success for us? And as I've gotten older, I've realized I get to have what I choose to have.
Right.
And certainly we're all impacted by decisions of companies. I don't mean that, but like, I get to decide how I show up in a moment. I decide how I show up at work. I decide how I show up for my family. And I think that that's been a really interesting shift as this younger generation comes into the workplace, right? They're less worried about having it all, and they're more worried about just being authentic. And I love that because I think at times I struggled, and certainly earlier in the career and when I had kids and they were younger, I always felt really burdened by the fact that I wasn't showing up perfectly for everybody. And that didn't serve me any good,
right? That
feeling. I needed to have been more thoughtful, I think, at that moment about what are my choices and can I live with them? And so there's been some good lessons along the way. I think now as I sit at this place where my kids are older, my parents are older, I'm leading teams, I try to think about more long-term, what is the legacy I want to leave here? Not that I'm going anywhere, right? But like, what am I trying to leave?
Soon.
No, but like, what is it that I'm trying to leave here in this business and with these people?
Right.
And am I creating space for them to lead? Or am I just kind of standing here trying to hold everything? And so I think I'm much more thoughtful about those things now. And it impacts, to your question, how am I showing up in all these roles? And so I'm happy that I get to see that transformation at work. And like I said, I love all of these generations at work because they really force us to grapple with these questions.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of those things that I think as we get older, we do recognize, okay, I had this idea of what was success and I'm always striving. And then I sometimes you are sort of running towards something and then you forget what you were even running towards because you realize you're just running.
Yep.
And it's so important sometimes to pause and think about what actually is success. What am I actually trying to accomplish instead of just going. And I think for sure the younger generation has a better, they're more self-reflective, I think, about that, for sure.
I think so.
Absolutely.
I think so too.
So last question, what if you could give any advice, so speaking of kind of younger generations, for younger women maybe coming into the tech space, What's some advice that you might give to them based on your experiences?
So I think they have a really unique opportunity because they're coming into the world and into technology at a time where their relationships are all online. And they're very comfortable navigating that. And I mention that because I still think one of the keys to success in technology is relationships, right? You have to have the skill and the curiosity and the drive to learn, but it's really about helping other people understand the benefits of the tool or the platform that you're trying to introduce. So what I try to do where I work, I am very involved in a Women in Technology program, and as we're engaging with women early in their careers, I try to encourage them to take those opportunities to network and build relationships and to learn from as many leaders as possible, because I think then that shapes your career in really interesting ways. And it's something, as I look back on my own journey at the start, wow, I wish I'd done more of that. I was just so busy trying to climb the ladder that I wasn't always as thoughtful about those things in the early on. So that's what I try to encourage people to do, but also certainly in technology say you have to be curious, especially right now as we sit at the intersection of AI and all these things, right?
Yes.
Be incredibly curious about the world, and that will serve you well.
Well, that is wonderful advice, Heather, for sure. I think that we can all continue to learn from that advice as well. Stay curious, build relationships. I think those are the keys. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being here with us today.
It was nice to talk to you.